gosh, I gotta clip that. Actually, I said it was 55, it's 56. I apologize. So it appears that it's a dual piston caliper up front and for brakes, and up in the back you've got a single caliper. The lever is like really stiff, so I assess that the braking is going to be pretty strong. But and I think the bike comes in at about 305 pounds total with the battery installed. I believe it also has a load bearing capacity of 400 pounds, you know, in terms of passengers and whatever other luggage you can stow on this thing. And one of the things that the developers thought was quite handy was to put in some mounting points. So you had these 3 pins on one side as well as the other for mounting accessories. So it'll be interesting to see what they had in mind, because let me get on the bike so you can see that my leg covers up half of them. So, you know, I'm thinking that what the plan was is that you have some sort of bracket that angles and it clears this step in the frame, and it comes out back, so, you know, maybe for some sort of luggage or something. I'm not sure what they really had in mind putting up front there. But anyway, so the plastic looks good. The paint looks nice. I don't see really any aberrations or anything in the paint. A little bit here, maybe molding, you know, sink marks from the molding on one side, on the back side. But, you know, it looks very nice. I mean, I assume this is aluminum anodized. Looks nice. So there's the suspension travel. And what do you got there? About 6 inches of suspension travel. As far as rain guards, fenders per se, you've got this, which is sort of protecting the swing arm and suspension linkages, and you've got the shorty. I don't know why current generations just absolutely hate fenders, but nonetheless, it is the trend. So, you know, and it doesn't look bad at all. I mean, nice assembly for the license plate light, the obligatory dot reflectors, turn signals are all nice. I'm sure those are LEDs. Yeah. This side. So there's the I don't know. I guess the polarizing cover for the belt, which, you know, from day one everybody's been saying they don't like it, whatever. However, I tend to support this thing being here, just to protect the belt from mud and debris. You can see just with riding up and down the street, it had been raining over here for a couple of days. I already got mud, which right on the cover, which in fact would have gotten right on the belt itself. However, the Harley live wire or the Zero doesn't have any protection for the belt. But you know what? How can that be a bad thing? And apparently it's easy enough to take off, and it looks nice without it getting in here. So I got in and I dismounted the battery, and I didn't video it, but so in fact then pretty much is a single latch that needs to be unlatched. It's a heavy battery. I believe it's in the range of 80 pounds. It's a heavy battery, so how easy can you make it to remove an 80-pound battery that's suspended in the air hanging off a bike? I think the guys did a really good job with it. And in the end, you've got 3 connectors. Not sure how this works, but I would imagine positive, negative polarity. And then you've got your communication control from the battery up to the engine control unit. So bear in mind, I would definitely refer to Dong's video on getting started with the bike. Also, I'm under here, and there's more mounting points here. 2 more pins here. Actually, there are 8, 4 on each side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I would watch the video because it is not intuitive exactly. It's fairly intuitive, but due to the hanging weight, the battery and the unlatching sort of hang up. So you have to know that you're doing it the right way. And the only way that you know that you're trying to unmount the battery the correct way is if you see somebody do it. So it is on video. Also, bear in mind that this is just like a single, where is it? Push-on connector. And there's really no grab points to pull this out. But nonetheless, and in fact, here is a spring-loaded release mechanism that maybe I didn't quite catch, that you actually push this in to actually be able to unmount the cables. So just watch the video and you'll see the hand motions needed to get the battery out. And that tells you everything that you know you're doing it right. You just need a little bit more force to get it out. So interestingly, I'm coming on the back side of the plastic, one of the lower skirts here, and you can actually see the light shining through it. So they start with a fairly translucent, thin-walled plastic, and they paint it. And so I think the translucency, basically tells you everything. It's not the thickest piece of plastic in the world. But again, for the U.S. assemblage and generally everything that's on this bike component-wise, I guess also if I compared it to what Saunders' Metacycle looked at for $5,000, but really, in the end, it's probably more like a $6,500 bike if it were even available, versus the release price of $7,800 for this. They had to strive to really work to keep the bill of materials down. Apparently, what Dong had indicated, so from the original videos of the early prototypes, the latching mechanism has been redesigned completely. And in fact, from what I remember from the original videos, the whole integration with the fact that if you look at the frame, this is just not a standard design where you're not crossing the bottom section here with a truss, a triangular, closing a triangular truss like is normally done with conventional frames, where either you create that truss with a frame element itself, or you use the battery or the engine, in the case of a gas bike, as a stress member. So this is just not supported. So I kind of think of it like the difference between a standard bicycle, which has a male frame and a female frame, and the female frame is definitely weaker. So given all that, the MEs had to do, I would believe, like a more unusual job, or had more difficulty in ensuring that, especially where all the stresses of road bumps, acceleration, deceleration, the ridiculous wheeling and dropping this bike that was done. It's one thing to accommodate this torsional stress up here without the support of a member, a 45-degree member closing up the frame itself. It's one thing on a 300-pound bike, which isn't the heaviest bike in the world, and I don't know how many bikes are actually under 200 pounds. So that's not the issue. The issue is putting 400 pounds of passenger and or luggage or stowage on this thing. But nonetheless, you know, a discussion at Expo Electrify Miami with the lead ME on the project, they really tested this thing through and through with, you know, excessive vibration testing, dyno testing, strain gauges all over, plus all the basic finite element analysis that is obligatory in the design of any mechanical system these days. So I'm sure that they have designed this thing so that while torsionally rocking that way and this way, it could be stiffer, but given what the motor can do, and the speeds that it can go, there's really only so far that you have to stiffen this frame up anyway. I mean, because it can't be pushed like a liter gas bike. Anyway, so returning back, there are a couple of features here, like for instance, you know, watch for your red mark. Watch for your red things. Okay, so first of all, you know, that. Okay. Okay, so in fact, use only this handle to move battery. Okay, so the handle release, there is actually a handle release. Don't try to pry up the handle without first releasing the handle. I don't know why it doesn't lock back down immediately, but it must be the whole linkage locks it back down, and when it's locked into the bike, that it goes down. So there's an attempt at some level of security. So you got a three-digit, rotary tumbler lock here. It's interesting. I don't know what the hell's going on here, but I guess that switch gets in there and tells you the state of the charge of the battery. I can see some other verbiage underneath on the label here, but you know, it says 4.3 kilowatt hours, 1200 cycle battery, serial numbers on it, product date, so 2023-7. So this was July, and we're now early October. So. Actually then what I was mentioning too is that one of the major changes from the original concept, which I believe ultimately led to Ryvid increasing the retail of the bike up to the $9,000 range, was that he actually put the charger on board. And I believe I'm characterizing this correctly. It is level 1 or level 2 charging. So I forget what they said exactly, but at 110, I believe it's like 4 amps, and on 220, it's 8. So you double the charge rate by doubling the voltage. So most almost all European countries are at 220, 240-ish, whatever, 230, China 230 volts. US actually this is a 220, 240 volt system, that typically is I guess shared down to 110, but you know, most houses have the ability or do have actually 220 either oven or dryer circuits available, but the control the electrical panel has got 220, so you know, whatever, it's a couple $1,000 maybe to put in the 220 line if you don't have one already. This is what they supplied, the standard 110 cable. I don't know if this is 12 gauge or what, but anyway, it's got this like weird flat blade connector here, so it's not your standard computer cable. And then they also supplied the 220, but apparently there is a J-type connector available, or will be available, or you can use one from Amazon or whatever. They were going to send me a link on what they recommended. So, so here's my car charger. So I've got the wrong plug on there. It's the older style. But having this adapter for the J plug, definitely provides you with portability and universality, that wherever you find a level 2 charging, you could charge So, and I don't know. So let's come up here. So in here, I don't know. I mean, you might get a plug compact enough, or a converter small enough, but you still got to carry the cable, and there's really no space on the bike for the cable. So that sort of requires a backpack. You know what? But I would imagine that this is the perfect space that you could probably come up with some sort of mounting system that looks elegant, which allows you to actually stow the cables. And if you wanted to carry simply one cable with appropriate adapters, or a cable on each side for 110 or 220, you could do that. That would be the place where I would probably look to put it, because I hate riding with a backpack. Anyway, so where else were we? You know, I mean, the wheels are nice. I mean, they're actually gorgeous. You know, so very nice wheels. They got the Pirelli Diablos. I'm not sure if this is like an OEM version of the Diablo. It's what is I don't know, Diablo something, Rosso 4. I gotta look that up and see how it is. So that's front and back. It follows the trend towards these much fatter tires, and so far then I don't have a plate on it yet. I'm gonna get a plate tomorrow, and so it's the weekend, it's Sunday. I got the delivery, and the factory guys were actually in on site because they're all in Miami right now for the show. There's an SD card inside here, which I don't know if they just swapped the card or they took the programming from the card, but you actually have to unmount the head here and get at it. So what they did is they updated the TFT display. So if you get in here, you can see, and if you check the owner's manual, there are additional lights which aren't illuminated, but you can see that they're actually in the display itself. So you got an ABS light, a check engine light, high beam, and a gas light. So I forget what they said. I think what they did is they activated the gas light to indicate a low battery situation, which makes sense. You know, because actually, if you look at, it's got a gas pump, and instead of a hose on it, it does have an electrical cable versus a hose. So sure, that could be, you know, modern day way of representing an electric pump to fill your bike. And then the check engine, well, obviously there's no engine, but, you know, check motor. So apparently any faults in the system show up on the TFD display by name, but you also get a warning annunciator here. And so here and here you have two things for settings. So I believe this side is for night-day mode to change the intensity of the display, and then this is some settings which I haven't gotten into. Apparently you have to hold this down for 2 seconds to activate them, and I wasn't sure if it was actually a touchscreen or not, and so I went back to the book and I looked for whether there were additional buttons that control that, or that was actually a touchscreen, and so it is. So it's just that you got to hold it a couple of seconds. So switch gear is all very nice, actually, unlike the Harley, which puts the right and left turn signal switch on different pods on each side, which is just quintessential Harley, but quintessential more difficult to work with. There's plenty of space to get in at the horn button. Here's your turn signals. At some point they said they were self-canceling, but I went back into the book and it said, you know, that they're not. So I have to check and see what the status is. But the owner's manual is at Rev 1.0 right now, so there have been no modifications, for example, to indicate these annunciators are indicated in the book or in the manual as being non-functional, but now there is functionality, so at least we know that they have to rev up the manual for that particular change in the TFT interface. So all plenty of real estate, gloved hand, get in there, horn, high beam, low beam. Okay, so apparently it has always on running headlight, daylight headlight. But the odd thing is that this is on off for the high beam, on off for the low beam. It's not that you switch between high and low. It's you have to toggle the high on and off, on and off. It's kind of weird. I gotta sort of get used to that. And then R is you push to hold for reverse, and then holding the R throttle back. So this is fairly typical of a Chinese scooter actually that has some reverse functionality. I don't know if they put this on any zeros, and I know that Livewire 1 ELW as well as Del Mar, I don't believe have a reverse on it, so it's definitely not common in the real motorcycles. So anyway, let's go back. So in terms of the output of the motor, standard. Let's finish the pods. So conventional hazard warnings. This you'll never find on anything except for a few bikes, including Harley's Pan America, where you can raise and lower the seat. Interestingly enough, I'm 5'9". I don't have any problem flat footing just about any bike that I get on. But at its maximum height, I can't flat foot this thing. So it really is a tall bike, and it's a good thing that it's got the seat, height adjustment, because it makes it infinitely more flexible with regard to rider size. Mode, there's actually 3 modes. There's park, so if the kickstand's down, you can't get it out of park mode. Then you've got economy, and you've got sport mode. So unlike the Saunders, the sport mode is not temporary or intermittent. When you go into sport mode, you're in sport mode, and you get the extra power available with that. So I think the book said in an economy mode that you cannot do more than 65 or 70 miles an hour. So you've got that, then you've got your motor on, off, and this, even though it looks like there are 2 functions, but it's just it doesn't have 2 sides to the switch. It's just toggle on, toggle off. This, I did mention it in one of my postings. It's got cruise control, but it is not what we all know to be conventional cruise control. So cruise control today now has like radar sensing, speed trimming control. So you set the desired speed, it watches the vehicles in front of you, and it trims your speed accordingly to the car in front of you. And old school, that's been around since the 70s, would have a set and a resume button that also functioned as the trim speed up and trim speed down. So this doesn't have any of that functionality. It's just you set the speed at where you want it. And I have to get it out on the highway once I get a plate just to see if it's kind of like a mechanical throttle holder, which holds the throttle at a fixed position irrespective of the speed that you're going. So if your load conditions change, like you're going up a hill, one of the old school mechanical throttle holds won't adjust for speed. So this may actually hold speed at its set point. It may not. I don't know yet. It's not really well documented. So I'll get into that once I get into the bike a little bit more. So where did I want to go next? So going up the back, single shock. You can see the motor in there here. They were a bit concerned about the motor being casting and the potential problems caused by the porosity in the casting. And you can see that, there's a little bit of stuff going on down there in the casting. I don't know if that's actually marking they put down to, kind of, I guess, like an airplane pilot would do to, let me get in there, to mark the position of the screws, so you can see that whether it's walked out or not. And it's an easy check. So here's like the actuator for the seat height adjustment, and here's like the, Kawasaki would call it the Unitrack or the monoshock in there. So I believe under here you've got your preload adjustment. I don't know. I think when Saunders was setting up my bike for delivery, they did ask me like how I wanted the preload adjusted for light, medium, or heavy weight. And I don't know if there's any damping on this thing at all, any damping adjustability. And then up front on the shocks, on the forks, clearly there's no interconnect, and I believe soft hard. I assume that's going to be the damping response versus preload on the springs. So, again, like as you can see, they are inverted forks. Interestingly, they've got a little shroud which protects the fork, the exposed chromed portion of the fork. Get over on the Harley, and they sort of have a similar thing. It's just like a little lip that's on the fender. The Zero SR also tries to get in there and protect this as well, but as you can see, I do have crap, mud and stuff, that dried mud that's on there. So, I mean, this is definitely better coverage, better protection. And I guess, like old school, they would have put some sort of bellows rubber on their cover. But all towards this leanness that current generation motorcyclists like. A couple of other, beautiful features. The seat's gorgeous, actually. It really is a very nicely designed seat. It's kind of, the Zero likewise did a very nice job on the seat, but the one thing is that the foam on the Zero is definitely a lot more compliant, and it's thicker. So I guess you get in here, you get about 2 inches, an inch and a half, inch and 3/4 of foam, which I imagine goes through the whole thing. But this area right here is which takes that part of your body takes the most abuse. And this is just, whatever it is, where we're at, an inch and a half going across. Very stiff foam. But if you can only put 60 miles on the bike, at best, you're on the bike, an hour and a half before you need to get off and charge it. So, I don't know. This is one of those things of form over function, which you might as well have the beauty and the elegance of the lines, and I like the contrast stitching and the little Ryvid tag too. It's nice. The debossing is nicely done. So I don't know. I don't think you can stay on the bike long enough for it to be really irritating, seat wise. So as far as, and pardon me, I hate the word, but making it street ready through DOT requirements, homogenization, whatever. This is kind of what Saunders sought to do with the Metacycle, having sort of a lean, nice brake light, turn signals, and all that. But the thing was, they just didn't have enough display area for the brake light. So I don't really see any reason why anybody would want to muck around with that. It's nice. I think the aesthetics of this bike are probably about some of the nicest aesthetics that I've seen on a UJM type naked, sports bike or whatever. This I love. Passenger grab rail on both sides. It's probably a glass reinforced nylon or something. It's stiff. There's no compliance in it, so it provides a potential passenger with a good sense of security. Nice hardware. I like it. Love that. It's kind of the iPhone, designed in Cupertino thing, which shows the U.S., the United States, the American heritage to it. You know, it's not aggressive with the marks and the branding on it, but it's got the logos in a few places, and you know, Ryvid, Anthem, and it's got the stylized R, boom, boom, in a few places, so it's nice. Much smaller disc. So here's the adjusting mechanisms for the belt. You know, kind of pretty conventional off a chain-driven bike. Tiny master cylinder for the rear, which is pretty commonplace. What else did I want to talk about? Okay, so basically, then I don't know, what is it? 7.5 kilowatt hour motor, which is exactly 10 horse. So this puts it right in the range of like one of the most common bikes that have been produced for 30, 40 years now, and that would be a Suzuki AX100. And so it's like a 99 cc two-stroke engine, and that's 100 cc, and they both have the same horsepower output in normal mode. So it's a 10 horse bike, which means it's a 100 cc bike basically. So anything that you could do with a 100 cc bike, you can do with this thing, you know, except for the range, because 100 cc bike is probably going to run you about 70 miles a gallon, or maybe a little bit more. So 3-gallon tank, you know, you're doing 200 miles, whereas with this, factory guys are saying in practice a normal guy's ride is going to get you about 60 miles of range. So that's it. The other thing that I will comment on, as compared to a Suzuki AX100, this is at least the size of a 400, if not up to a 650 cc motorcycle in its stature, in its heft, all that. So there, make no bones about it, this does not feel like a small bike. I mean, it's certainly not the same weight of the Harley Livewire, which is at, you know, whatever it is, 540 pounds. The Harley is just a piece of heavy American iron, as all Harleys are, and the Livewire is no different in terms of the heft of it. The Zero, and this I believe is a 2017 SR. It's probably, the SR is probably a bit bigger, to the tune of about 15% bigger, but it's also a higher horsepower bike too. So nonetheless, this, for a 10 horse bike, and with the sports mode, it will go up to 20 horse, just under, maybe 18.9 horsepower. And so it's a big bike, you know, for its displacement. What do you call it? Analog. It's a nice bike. Last thing I'll do is let's just get in here, because I think I've gone over most of the bike. The mirrors are well placed. I mean, you know, as all motorcycle mirrors, I got a nice, beautiful view of my shoulders, but you know, there is enough real estate on the wings that you see what's going on behind you without having to tuck in your shoulders so you can see what's going on. Last thing on the switch pod. This is the regen pedal. So, like for instance, a Chevy Bolt has got a regen paddle, you know, and so that's like an auxiliary braking that can get you off the mechanical brakes, and most EV riders learn how to use the regen function rapidly. Also,
here's what I found.
okay, sorry about that. Also, the other thing about regen, there is a little bit of a discrepancy right now. So regen functions in the eco mode, in terms of automatically regenerating power based on throttle closure. However, that is deactivated in sport mode. The manual says that mechanical braking in sports mode or the switch will activate regen, but on site yesterday with the mechanical engineer, he had said that he didn't believe that that regen is activated in sport mode with the application of the front brake or the rear brake. So that's it. I'm thrilled with a number of things with the Ryvid Anthem. Everybody who kind of looked at this space motorcycle, the 4.5 kilowatt hour battery, dealt with Saunders and the Metacycle, which, from what I understand, that probably shipped about 700 out of the original 3,000 or 4,000 that were paid for. So in the end, people aren't getting what they paid for, most people. Also, the specs were dramatically downgraded. The weight was substantially increased. All the elegance of the original design, from the taillight to the seat, to the size of the battery and how it protrudes from the side, increased. They were originally going to have a naked aluminum variant of the frame available that they couldn't do. So just about everything about the Metacycle fell short, including tremendous delays in shipping, whatever. But the guys at Ryvid executed this. They committed to start to shipping end of summer, and they did this right down to the wire. But nonetheless, they fit a very aggressive window. Number one. The other thing I'm very happy with is that any differences between the early prototypes and the current model, production model, were due to upgrades in things like the whole latching assembly of the battery was dramatically improved, as well as the onboard charger that was added. I don't know what else really has changed aesthetically, but I mean, this is pretty much the bike that they were demoing, in the 2 or 3 that they had out there for the past year. This is essentially the same bike. So, what you paid for is you're getting more than what you paid for, actually. So how can anybody not be happy? So the thing is now, so I have experience with, what's 1,000 or 1,500 watt hub-driven Chinese scooter that has about, 60 kilometers range to it. So that's 36 miles when you're doing 20 miles an hour or less. But then I also have experience with 2 real-world competitive motorcycles. So the thing is, how well does the 4.3 kilowatt hour battery do in terms of meeting day-to-day needs? Did they thread the needle as tightly as they could, which I believe they did? But the thing is that sufficient for the marketplace, given the pricing that they're in at? So we'll see what the market says. It's certainly, for an early adopter, a very attractive bike, and it lives up to everything that they said it would be. Also, the thing is I took a 20-minute test drive yesterday on some of the earlier prototypes that they have, that should have been essentially what the current production model is. Maybe some of the software wasn't up to date, or the firmware wasn't up to date compared to what I have here. But it's torquey, but it's not one of these things, but it was never purported to be. So I think it definitely is a lot more torquey than the Suzuki AX100, for example, and so remember, the AX100 is a 2-stroke, so you're making power every other stroke versus a 4-stroke. So those are fundamentally peppier engines, and I think that the electric motor is definitely way more peppy than the Suzuki. The Suzuki AX100 is a 4-speed, which tops out at about, I would say 70 kilometers an hour. So that's like 42 miles an hour. So this thing has way more functionality if it can do like 70 plus miles an hour on an interstate. So really, my observations on the AX100 and the 1,000-watt hub-driven scooter, Chinese scooter, are all in Cuba. And they've got a couple of things going on there. Even on their highways, the highways are in a bad state of repair. And on their quote-unquote interstates, or the interprovincial highway system, you will get horse-drawn carriages, people pedaling like tricycles. So you essentially have traffic that is at pedestrian speeds on these on their interstates, as well as you'll get modern cars which are just cranking, and then you got trucks which are doing something like 30-40 miles an hour. So the thing is, the speeds on their roads, even what they consider interprovincial highways, are slow, and they can be slow because everybody expects that they're sharing a highway with the bicycle, or ridiculous stuff that isn't permitted on highways here. So this sort of class of 1,000-1,500 watt scooter with about 40 or 50 kilometers of range, or a Suzuki AX100, which tops out again at 70 kilometers, which is 7 times 42 miles an hour, is fine for their highways, but obviously that's not fine for our interstates here. So this thing should do fine on the interstate, albeit, interstate travel at 70, you're probably going to get 20 miles range out of the battery, though, if my experience with the 13.0 and the 13 point whatever 4 or whatever the Harley has is so it's definitely a hugely more functional bike than its equivalent in an electric scooter or a two-stroke 125 cc variety. It'd be interesting to put this up against the new Cowie hybrids, which are running 125 cc equivalents, gas engines with the motor, electric motor to augment. So kind of like a Volt or hybrid, I guess a plug-in Prius or something like that. So it'd be interesting to see how this stacks up and where Kawasaki ends up coming in price-wise for a production model. I think we have European pricing on it, but it seems to me, given that they have two powertrains, both the gas powertrain and the electric powertrain, it's got to be more expensive. No matter what. Oh, by the way, speaking of that, apparently you cannot sell this bike in Europe without the ABS. This bike does not have ABS. ABS modules should be easily upgradable by the factory. And next generations are a European version, but they tried to keep costs down where they could. Anyway, so my observation is that the throttle is not one of the big bikes. It's peaky, it's fun, but it's not the same, especially when you roll up to it's 40, 50, 55 miles an hour. But that's to be expected because it's only a 10 horse motor, a 10 to 20 horse motor. So anyway, overall, I'm thrilled with the bike. I'm thrilled with the performance of Ryvid and getting this thing out there in the market in such a beautiful condition. I don't know. You got all these like weird electric bikes, which are kind of moving into this space a little bit from the bottom end, that all look really weird and unconventional. This bike has, whereas the motorcycle looked completely unconventional for a motorcycle, this obviously has its roots in motorcycle construction. Yet it's different enough that it's unique. The other thing that I like about it, and I don't know if this was the intent, but definitely where you got contrasting body panels, and the ones that don't, or the one that doesn't, is the black, because that the black plastic body panels integrate in with the black frame, and you can't really, like, your eye is not broken in, as you can see, you got the gold and the black. This thing looks like a velociraptor in its preying position, its hunting position, and I don't know if that was the intent, but you look at some of the images of a velociraptor, an artistic representation of a velociraptor on Google Images or something, and all the lines are there. So it's really an aggressive, yet with all the curves and swoopy, it's an elegantly aggressive looking bike. Whereas I think the Saunders Metacycle just looks weird. Everything is out of proportion. It's too spindly and narrow in the top part, and because of the oversized battery that they had to put in, it's bulbous. I think the hub drive just makes the back end look bulbous. So originally I thought the Metacycle looked good, but then the more I saw it, the less I liked it. This thing looks great. I mean, it is just a neat looking bike, and I wish the folks at Ryvid an immense amount of success. It was a pretty gutsy thing. They got it to market. Hope they figured out their market and can find a way to sell these in the market after the first adopters. Essentially, you have the Zero, which I believe to this day has never made a profit. Correct me if I'm wrong, and who knows how many generations of models and different genres they have out there now. But they've been at it for 15 plus years. The Harley, I believe, in either the Livewire variant of the first edition, the first model, or the Harley variant, that they've not sold more than 3,000 total motorcycles to date. And this bike was released in 2019, so it's coming up on 5 years in the marketplace, and they haven't even sold 3,000 of them, and they've spent at least $500 million in design and operational losses over the past 5 years. So that's not a good thing. It doesn't bode well. But after talking with the engineers and management at Ryvid, it is clear that this is just the first thing that they're doing, and that they have other projects currently in the hopper that they're actively working on. So my guess is that their strategy is try to get so in order to develop this, and in hindsight, the state of California gave them $20 million because they were a California manufacturer. And I believe that they said that their direct labor, now that they've got staffed up, is 40 people. So, that was probably a reasonable investment by California to make to promote jobs in a field that California is promoting, which is the electric vehicle space, and with their goals to eliminate all gas engines from transportation by whatever it is, another 12 years or whatever their target is. And if you look at the potential amount of money that Saunders took from their customers that they haven't delivered bikes on, it's about 20 million. So to get this endeavor off the ground, that's what this bike cost to go to market for the first couple of thousand. So I question where Ryvid would have been at this point without the $20 million infusion from the state of California. But let's assume that irrespective of where the funding came from, and that Saunders was in at it at 20 of investment from their early adopter base, and of course the original goal was 1,000 units in the first edition for Ryvid, which at the nominal actually 7,500 if you consider their shipping subsidy and stuff like that. Because to get it out of California into Miami, I ended up paying $150 because they had 500 that they applied towards the shipping, and the cross country is $650. So. That's correct. So nonetheless, it ultimately was 7,500. So that's 7.5 million that they got from the early adopters in terms of deposits, full deposits, and all 1,000 people didn't put down a full deposit because they had a $500 whatever deposit program as well. So who knows? They probably got like 4 million, 3 million from early receipts. 20 from the state, so that's 23 million of upfront funding. It's about what Saunders stole at this point, it looks like, from their customer base. So without the 20 million, Saunders, Ryvid, I don't think would be where they are at right now. So nonetheless, it is what it is, and they are here, and they're here where Saunders and the Metacycle aren't here. So they executed, and there's no reason why, given that they've already outgrown their initial development facility into a bigger manufacturing facility, there's no reason why they shouldn't get additional funding grants from the state of California either. It is, as far as these sort of programs go, it looks like money that was well spent by California, as I guess compared to a high-speed train and whatnot. So now the thing is, though, they have to. Okay, so they're a very engineering-focused company. There's no doubt about that. But also, whoever worked on the design too, if they did all this design in-house, the industrial design of it, it's a gorgeous bike. So they know how to build stuff, and they know their tech. And sometimes you get Saunders, who's all marketing, and he lets somebody else do all the other stuff, development and manufacturing. These guys are definitely more integrated from the ground up, and there are a lot of rabid motorcyclists in the company with long pedigree from their personal experience in amateur and racing, all the way up to having experience with Zero as well as Ducati. So these guys are definitely motorcyclists and engineers, and they also can design a nice looking product. The question is, do they know the market, and can they actually thread that needle in this very difficult space in a difficult economy? So they're doing the right thing. They're getting out. They're showing it off. They're meeting their commitments. They're executing everything that they should, even given in light that the Harley Davidson Livewire Del Mar should have been out in March, and it's still. I don't know if they're actually shipping the 100 first editions right now, or first strike as they would call them, but they did embargo that because the first few that got out there had a problem. They embargoed additional test drives, and I don't know if they've restarted shipping, but they're also now kind of indicating that they got big news that's coming up at the end of the month. So I can only infer that they're looking to announce that they're starting shipments. So most likely they'll be doing shipments of the Del Mar by the end of the year. I mean, to the general public and the early deposit placers. So that's what, March. That's 9 months late to market, which Ryvid was not 9 months late to market. They came to market exactly when they said they were gonna. They also have, I guess, the unrecorded desires of anybody who is looking in at the Metacycle for whatever reasons, whether they were first-time motorcycle buyers and it just struck them as the perfect price point and specifications and whatever for them to get into motorcycling for the first time. I know that a lot of us who looked at that, came out of a long history of motorcycling. And so I've definitely heard at least a couple people commenting that, once they saw this at one of the expos or one of the road shows, that they immediately realized they're not getting the Saunders, so they put deposits down on this. So given that initial bump, they can probably have 10-15% of who would have been the Metacycle buyers that never were realized. So because they're in the same space and they ran a pretty much parallel path with them, however they executed. So that's an upside. They've flushed all the early adopters right now. If you consider that Harley Davidson only sold 3,000 live wires in 5 years, well, how big is the early adopter base? It's got to be way less than 3,000, and for different reasons though, they're just not selling. So that's the thing. Is this the right machine for the market, given battery technology and what the market is willing to pay for this sort of bike? So best of luck, guys. Go break a leg. All right, that's it.